Okay, time for another small update. Overall, progress is still pretty slow. I have yet to finish any sort of work with the engine's position within the car's engine bay. So that's been pretty much at a full out standstill while other priorities are currently taking my attention. I have made some progress though with regards to the suspension. So, as I've mentioned before, this is going to be a 5-lug conversion. So these hubs are from a 91 MR2 turbo with ABS. And as you can see, they're mounted on Technotoy Tuning's lower control arms. And so far, everything looks like it's going to work out quite well. A couple potential snags will be overall length of the CV joints. So I'll have to very carefully measure that once the engine's finished being mounted in the bay. I may need to run a small spacer in order to ensure the axle's at the correct length. The rear tie arm here, you can see that's hanging. So as you can see, there's going to be some sort of solution here to revise this or full out replace it. And I'm not entirely sure if I want to replace the arm itself, modify this knuckle here, or perhaps the subframe and just redo that whole assembly and move the mounting point further back. Plenty of options, and I need to kind of figure out what's the right path to go down. So let's take a look at the front. So the front worked out pretty well. The lower control arm, of course, looks great. The ball joints, they're all pretty much the same in terms of overall dimension and have no real issue going to the Gen 2 hubs. So that's not a major consideration. I did luck out on this, that there's some solutions here, and I'll explain the problem and kind of what I've done so far to find, I guess, maybe a viable option, a viable path. So if you're not familiar with the Gen 2 MR2s, ultimately this hub is supposed to be on the passenger side or the opposite side of the vehicle. So your mounting points would normally be on this side, and your tie rod would normally connect on this side, because the steering rack on the second generation's in front of the axle line. So being that this is definitely reversed, or mirrored if you will, a major consideration had to be made with regards to the tie rod. So normally, because this would be over on this side, it would normally have the tie rod and the tapers going in this side. So clearly that's not going to work in this, just because the steering rack is well above this height. So upon a little bit more research, Technotoy Tuning does make a Gen 2 tie rod spherical joint. So, the whole kit itself uses a bolt, and they provide a drill bit to drill this out. And that was actually quite easy to do, but it means I can actually reverse the side that this is going to be mounting on. And that actually worked out very well. So if this were to be pretty close to parallel to the ground, this is not far off from parallel. I still need to go through and run the measurements, but yeah, can't really do that without the strut assembly in here. So more to come to verify that this is truly a viable solution. But so far, everything looks very promising. Now, if you do want to go down this path, know that this will not bolt up to the Gen 1 inner tie rods. I think these are an M10, whereas the Gen 1s are going to be an M8. So this is a Gen 2 inner tie rod. and it bolts up just fine, and it's a little bit longer. So, it's turned out to be quite an easy solution, and so far so good. Other progress, it's more of just a show and tell. So I've got Gen 2 strut housings and Technotoy Tuning's kind of a DIY coilover kit. So hopefully here in the near future I'll be getting a set of Coney struts. I'm pretty fond of the Coney yellows. So we'll get those in, and ground control top hats. And those top hats I think will be a good solution and will match up to the Gen 2 strut cartridges. They're kind of working on that currently, so fingers crossed, and hopefully it all works out well. One of the items I will be doing for this is I will be doing a helper spring setup. I've seen far too many pictures of people using these types of coilovers, and inevitably the strut itself has additional length, and the spring can sit freely without being contained by either the upper or the lower spring perch. So really, you're only going to encounter that if you lift up the car, or in perhaps extreme scenarios on the road or track where pothole or otherwise you're lifting the tire up or close to it. You're going to potentially damage threads on the adjustable perches here, or the spring's not going to sit quite right, because now instead of sitting onto the base of the perch, it's going to be sitting on the mount, or I guess that lip, like that instead of that. But in either case scenario, the helper springs kind of mitigate that and ensures the main coil spring will sit correctly. So anyways, we'll get that solution engineered and put together. Hopefully it's just a simple item of measuring and purchasing the part. And yeah, that's pretty much it for updates. Currently working on a brake kit for this, and trying to figure out what path will ultimately go. Either Stop Tech or Willwood. But more to come on that as research continues. But that's pretty much the overall project as it currently stands. Not a whole lot else to really report on. That motor mount progress is slow, tedious, and honestly just not much time to tend to it. Suspension bolts on and off in a couple hours. Any sort of cutting, grinding, and welding can take a day pretty easily. I just don't have that kind of time to spare. But maybe here in the near future I'll find some free time and knock that out. Well, that's pretty much all I have. Once I get the struts in, I'll go ahead and do a better fit up video with the tires mounted on here, and do some additional measurements and find out if those CVs will work kind of as is, or if we need to worry about spacers. All right, well, that's all I have.